Hi, orchid people. I'm Roland Cooke, and this is my YouTube channel. It's called Ogro das Orquídeas, which translated means the Orchid Ogre, as I explained in an earlier video. It's Wednesday night, something like 7 o'clock in the evening now, and tomorrow morning, around 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning, I'll be leaving on a trip to the state of Goiás, which is something like 1,000 kilometers from where I am right now, and I'll be taking part in an orchid sale at the orchid shop that belongs to my friend Ricardo Gazali in the city of Rio Verde. So I'll be leaving at something like 5 o'clock, 4 o'clock in the morning, and I should arrive there, if everything goes well, I should arrive something like 7 or 8 o'clock in the evening. Along the way, I'll try to show you some of the typical vegetation that thrives in the state of Goiás, which is called the cerrado. It's the natural habitat for Cattleya walkeriana, which is one of the reasons why I'm going to Goiás. I'll try to show you something in that region, and I'll show you how Ricardo and other Brazilian orchidists grow their orchids, especially walkeriana and Lobelia, which is another Cattleya species which lives mostly more to the north, closer to Mato Grosso, in the state of Mato Grosso, reaching up to the Bolivia. Okay, so stick around, and please pardon my mistakes in making this video. It's a homemade video. I'm doing it by myself. My English isn't as good as it used to be, but I'll try to do my best. And if you like it, you can subscribe to the channel and press that little button. You'll get all the new videos that come out. And if you have any suggestions that you want to make, just leave the comments. I'll try to answer them as soon as I can. Okay, first of all, I'm going to show you a map of Brazil, and then a map of the region that walkeriana and Lobelia live in. That's the states of Minas Gerais, Goiás. And then I'll try to show you the route that I'm going to take to go to Goiás. It's about a 16-hour trip in my small truck, and it's actually fun. Roads aren't so bad, so I hope you enjoy the video, and stick around. I think it's going to be instructive. It's going to be fun for all of us. Okay. It's now 5 o'clock in the afternoon. We've been on the road for something like 13 hours. We're 900 kilometers out of São Paulo. And we just passed the border, the state border between Minas Gerais and the state of Goiás. And this is the real Brazilian Midwest. And it's also Cattleya walkeriana country, or at least it used to be. What I'm going to do, this is a ecosystem that they call the cerrado, and what I'm going to do, I'm going to pull over and try to show you some trees, some typical vegetation that they have here, that at least used to be, in the not so distant past, the habitat of Cattleya walkeriana. Okay, you won't find any more, unfortunately. I'll talk to you, I'll tell that when I stop the car, but let me find a nice place to stop. Wait a minute. How about right here. Okay. Okay, so I stopped the car. As you can see on the other side there, it's grazing land for cattle. Sometimes they plant soybeans, sugarcane. So that took away a large part of the cerrado ecosystem and took all the Cattleya walkerianas with it. Okay, let me get out. I'm going to show you some typical trees of this place where this species lives. Okay, wait a minute. Let me see. Here we are. So here we are. This is a small spot of original cerrado forest. It's typical of the Midwest region of Brazil, and it's home, or used to be home, to Cattleya walkeriana. Why am I saying it's no longer home for walkeriana? Is mostly because of over-collecting. Lots of people come to these places and remove the plants from the forest, take them, select the best ones, and sell the other ones at very cheap prices. Walkeriana is a very valuable and beautiful plant. Lots of people love this plant in Brazil, so it's worth money. And so people are taking these plants out of the forest for a long time. And as thus, it's become very, very scarce in nature. It's on the brink of extinction. It's not extinct. You can still find some small pockets of forest where you will find walkeriana, but it's becoming more and more difficult to find. I'm going to show you some characteristics. These trees, in the cerrado, you'll find large trees, not very large, but somewhat large trees, and the lower brushes like these behind me. Walkeriana lives mostly in nature on the top branches of the taller trees. This is because at least once every year, every 2 years, there's wildfires here. It burns everything. So any plants that would be living on the lower branches of a tree like this will be burned and will be killed. So the plants that survive in nature live on the top of the trees. You can see by the tree itself. If you look at the bark of the tree, I'll try to get closer. Here we are. You'll see that the bark of this tree, I'll break them. Oh, here we are. It's got very thick bark, and it's sort of corky. So this protects the tree from fire. So even if the grass below the trees catches fire, the trees continue living. It may lose all its leaves during the dry season. The dry season here in this area starts in April, goes on until July, with almost no rain at all. And this is important. I'll show you tomorrow on our next, in the continuation to this video. This is important to keep in mind when you're growing walkeriana at your home, because you just can't get a plant like walkeriana that lives 4 to 7 months a year in a drought area and stick it in a pot with a ball of soggy, wet sphagnum moss and expect it to live. It won't. So in another 2 hours, we'll be arriving at Ricardo's place in Rio Verde. By the time we get there, it'll be already dark. So tomorrow morning, I'll show you how people grow walkeriana here in the Brazilian Midwest. Okay, so let's move on. And so this is the natural habitat for walkeriana. It's a shame, it's very sad that you cannot find any more plants of walkeriana in this place or in lots of other places. You can find some plants in small pockets in private properties, but not, especially not on the side of a paved road like this one. But in the old days, you could find it. And during the month of May to June, you would see lots of plants flowering on these trees. Okay, so let's get back to the road, and tomorrow morning on the same video I'll show you how we grow walkerianas here in Brazil. Okay, stick on. Well, here we are. It's now 7 o'clock in the morning, and I arrived last evening at the orchid nursery, actually more of a store, orchid store, owned by Ricardo Gazali, who is a well-known Cattleya walkeriana collector and salesperson here in the state of Goiás. So we'll have a look at his little store in the city of Rio Verde, and I'll show you some of his walkerianas and how he grows these plants. Keep in mind that we are now in the middle of August, so the peak season for flowering walkerianas has already passed, and the season for Cattleya nobilior is just starting. So you won't see too many plants in flower, but you'll see some very nice, I hope, you'll see some pretty nice late season walkerianas and maybe some early nobiliars that Ricardo has at his place here. Okay, so let's go, let's have a look at the plants, and I'll show you how he grows these plants here at his place and the reason for growing in this manner. I already showed you on the road how the habitat that Cattleya walkeriana lives in. It's a very dry place. So throughout millions of years of evolution and natural selection, these plants have adjusted to these very harsh growing conditions. So it would be wise to try to copy these conditions when we try to grow these plants. They are a bit different from other Cattleyas. They need much less moisture, much less watering, and they have to be dried out between waterings. I'll show you that in his growing space, and you'll see how things are done in Rio Verde, which is the heart of the walkeriana country in Brazil. Okay, let's go have a look at it. Okay, let's see if I can open this gate. Oh yeah, it's open. Let's have a look at this. This is actually more of a store than a nursery. He sells his plants here. This is Mr. Ricardo Gazali. He owns this place. Bom dia.
Bom dia.
And he grows his plants almost all in slat baskets, wooden baskets like these. And you see they're hung pretty high, about 2 meters off the floor in baskets. This is a greenhouse, a metal greenhouse with plastic covering and a sheet of shade cloth, not very much. So during the midday hours, this becomes lots of sunlight comes in here. So okay, so let's see some of his plants. What have he's got? For those of you in the US are used to lots of walkerianas, you'll see some very nice plants here. Look at that. That's a semi-alba, something that must have semi-alba Tokyo in its background. These are Lobelias. I'll come back to these just in a minute. Another pretty nice one here. As I said, we are at the end of the flowering season for walkerianas. So you won't see too many plants, but he's got some pretty nice things coming up here. What's this? There we are. This one is pretty nice. Look at that one. Great shape, good plants. That's a pretty nice one too. Here. Let's see that one. Okay. It's not exactly the subject of this video, but look at these Lobelias. This is a light pink form of what they call the Amali section. This is an Amali here. That's very nice. Amalias come, these kinds of Lobelia come from the state of Mato Grosso, more to the north, even drier conditions during part of the year. Okay, so let's have a look at this plant. Look at this Lobelia here. Very nice. And so let's have a look at this plant. Okay, see if I can get one down over here somehow. They're all sort of tied in place. Wait a minute. Okay, so let's understand how this works. Actually, I'm showing you here a Lobelia Amali, but I could be talking about walkeriana. The growing conditions are more or less the same. So these plants come from very dry, harsh conditions, what I told you before, the cerrado. And keep in mind, the cerrado has two very distinct rain conditions. It's very dry from the month of February to mid-September, almost no rain, and then it starts raining September, and it rains a lot, lots of rain, and very hot conditions, lots of rain, going from September to late January. Okay, so how do these plants adapt to these conditions? Well, mostly they live on not very tall trees, but large trees called what they called Capitão do Mato, Terminalia argentea. It's a typical tree species here in the Cerrado region, highly resistant to drought, and these plants live high up in the tree tops, on branches, high branches. So you can see that both walkeriana and Lobelia have two very distinct kinds of pseudobulbs. They have the normal one, which is this one, and then they have sort of a stunted one, which is a small one like this one. Let's see if I can show it better here. There you are. That very small one that usually doesn't even have a leaf. And this has a reason. I'll show you this one. This is a walkeriana. You see it's growing in a basket with no medium at all. Just sometimes they put in some pieces of bark here, but not very much. So usually it doesn't have any medium, just the basket, and the roots all come out. Yeah, the roots all come out like that. So it's grown mounted like this in a basket, and it grows very well like this. So what happens is, during its growth cycle, during the wet months, starting in late September, walkeriana starts producing a new growth. And this growth takes something like 4 or 5 months to finish growing, and it doesn't flower. You can see that the growth came out here. It doesn't produce flowers. That's because this growth is the vegetative growth. This growth is made for the purpose of making a leaf to keep this plant growing well. Well, then a few months later, rain ceases and the dry season starts, so the plant makes another growth, and it saves on energy. It doesn't even make a leaf. It just uses this growth for making flowers, making blooms. You can see on this case it did the same thing, a very specific growth just for that. So it doesn't waste any energy in making new leaves during the dry season when it can't. So it just saves this, makes this stunted growth, and produces flowers from here. Okay? Well, you will see in many cases, mostly in cultivated walkerianas and Lobelias, that sometimes it produces flowers from here. This is very common in the alba forms, and very common in greenhouses, in controlled growing conditions. This is because if this plant doesn't get a dry season, which is very common when you're growing these plants at home, it doesn't feel a need to produce a stunted growth with no leaf to make flowers. So it has enough energy, it's very well grown, and it has enough energy to produce a leaf on this growth too. So you will see walkerianas in both forms. You will see them flowering from a stunted growth like this one, and you'll see them flowering from a complete pseudobulb with the leaf and everything, like this one. Okay, you'll see both. Here in Goiás, in the natural habitat, it's not too common because the conditions here are very dry, and Ricardo tries to grow his plants as close to possible to the natural conditions in which these plants grow in nature. You see it here. There's a stunted growth there. Okay, and the leaf here. Okay, so that more or less takes care of our visit to Ricardo. Okay, so we talked a lot about walkeriana. We traveled here to Goiás. It's quite of a distance from São Paulo and the major cities of Brazil, but they've got very, very fine walkerianas here. And next week we'll be traveling to Belo Horizonte, the capital of the state of Minas Gerais, which is also a walkeriana country, a place where they have very good walkerianas. We'll be seeing a show there, taking part in a show, and orchid sales. And I'll show you on our next video some very nice things that they're making in Belo Horizonte. See you then. Stick along. If you like the videos, subscribe, press on that little button so you can get the new videos as they come up. If you have any suggestions that you can make so we can make better and better videos for you, just tell me in the comments. I'll appreciate that. Okay? See you very soon. Hang along. We'll see lots of plants for the coming videos.